everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to the WPQuickies series, WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. So at this lunchtime quickie, I'm going to be talking about WordPress privacy policies and just go into a little bit of detail about what they are, what to include in them, and why you should have one. So thanks for taking your time this Sydney afternoon or wherever you are. If you are browsing along one of the social channels, make sure you hit one of the connect buttons, subscribe, the bell, the network, the connect to, the like, the thumbs up, whatever it is, click on that and that'd be great. And also drop your name where you are as well in the comments, just so I know who is online. So I've got a few people coming in online just now. I've got Jean from the so far sunny Central Coast. Yeah, we're due a big storm heading in. That's what the radio's been saying. So sunny at the moment, but stormy later on. Dowie, good day to you, Dowie, as well, on top of IT services. Thanks for joining in. Sunny Freedom, Sydney. Yeah. We've got Andrew from Dulwich Hill as well. Welcome, Andrew. While you guys are coming in, I'll just let you know that you'll probably already know this, but we have a new Facebook group. I'll make it a little bit bigger. There we go. A new Facebook group. So you can search that in Facebook. Just type in WordPress Sydney Meetup and you'll find that. We're kind of moved away from the page and getting more questions and interactivity with the group, which is good. All the links as well, people always ask me, but all the links for the presentation and stuff, what I do is afterwards, after the WP Quickies, I'll put them in the comment down below the video and also on the meetup page as well. So you'll get all the links afterwards. So you give me a little bit of time to collate that after the broadcast. So we've got Kerry as well from Wollongong. Hope you're having a great day, Kerry. If you want to ask some questions, drop them down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them throughout or circle round at the end to the questions. Okay, that's it for the notices. We've got John from Case Beach and Liz as well. Hi, Liz. How are you doing? Great to have you guys with us. Okay, let's jump in to the privacy policy stuff because some of it's a little bit lengthy, a little bit wordy. So here we go. So let's get stuck into the talk. Now, whether you run a hobbyist blog or maintain an e-commerce website, you're probably going to need a privacy policy for your website. But why? What is it for? And what should be inside it? So we're going to have a look into those sort of things today. Okay, first slide. What is a privacy policy? Well, all websites collect information about visitors in lots of different ways. So some data collection methods may include cookies, form submissions, user registrations, Google Analytics tracking, and blog comments, and many, many more of those, kind of the basic ones that most websites would have anyway. Now, a website privacy policy is a standard, a statement. It could be a document or a web page that outlines the personal data that the website collects and where that data is stored and how it is used. So it's a statement that basically tells how the personal information is stored and used. So why does my website need a privacy policy? This is a bit of a lengthy one. Now, in most countries, regions, states, and territories, having a privacy policy on your website is a legal requirement. Now, in Australia, because we're Australian based, so in Australia, if your business needs to comply with the Australian privacy principles, or it's called APPS or APPS, you need to have a privacy policy. Now, APPS is the framework for the Australian Privacy Act 1988. And I'll give you links to all these towards the end of the presentation, and you can look up these for yourself. Now, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, or OAIC, states that any business operating in Australia that generates more than 3 million in turnover annually is an app entity, and it must comply with Australian privacy principles. Now, it also states that some other organizations that generate 3 million or less must also comply with apps. And so, for example, they could be in the health service, or they could hold health information, they could buy or sell personal information, or they could be contracted as a service provider for the Commonwealth. Now, if your business isn't legally bound by apps, which most small businesses and hobbyists won't be covered by this, it's still best practice to have a privacy policy in place for transparency and customer confidence and civil litigations as well. It can go a long, long way to help you out if someone creates a lawsuit against you for whatever reason. Now, you should always speak to a privacy lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so always speak to a privacy lawyer to confirm if your business is or is not an APP entity. But in general, if you are not dealing with like personal information like health records, if you're not selling personal information, or if you're not providing services to a Commonwealth, and if your turnover is less than 3 million, in general, you don't legally require a privacy policy, but always check just to make sure. Okay, so what should you put in a privacy policy? Now, the Australian Privacy Principles, the APPs, it does set out a list of required information that you must provide in your privacy policy if you're legally bound to that. But in general, it's good practice to have this stuff, even if you're not legally bound to do that. So the things that should be included, but are not limited to, things like the types of personal identifiable information, or PII, that you collect and store. How you collect and store the PII, the purposes for which you collect the personally identifiable information, how an individual may access their own data, and how they can ask for corrections and updates to that. So if you're holding misinformation, there needs to be a way for that person to be able to contact you so they can correct it. How you will handle a complaint, and how an individual can make a complaint if you breach the privacy policy. And if you're likely to disclose personally identifiable information to external parties, overseas recipients, and if so, to who, which countries, and your contact details. Now, those are if you are abiding by those APP, the Australian Privacy Principles, if you're legally bound, then those are the minimum requirements of things that you need to put in your privacy policy. Now, there's probably going to be a lot more stuff in general that you put in there, and we'll have a look at the WordPress basic template in a few seconds. But regardless of what goes in your privacy policy, it should be written in plain English and easy to understand. So no legalese in there. That's also a requirement as well. It needs to be understandable by Joe Blogs in the street if you're reading it. They don't want to be able to go to a lawyer just to understand your privacy policy. So it needs to be in plain English and easy to understand for everyone. Okay, so where does your privacy policy go? Now, it's common practice to put your privacy policy in the footer of your website, but you can place it anywhere that's easily accessible to visitors. Now, the key takeaway here is that it should be easy to find and visible. So don't tuck it away in like a 4 series of navigation links or on some weird page that nobody's ever going to visit. Make sure it's somewhere visible and easy to find. Okay, so WordPress itself, as of a few versions back, a couple of years back, it comes with a generic privacy policy page. And to access that, you can navigate to the settings. There's a little picture there. So settings and then privacy for that. And you can go onto the settings and privacy, and you can find out where that is. So that's the wrong graphic in that one. I'll update that in the slide. Now, this opens up the privacy settings page in WordPress, and here's a little screenshot of it just here. I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see some of the writing in there. So on this page, you can create a new page for your privacy policy, or you can change it to an existing page in your WordPress site. So if you've already got an existing privacy policy page, you can use the link at the bottom there and use that particular page, or just generate a brand new one as well. Now, if you create a new privacy policy page, it's going to be pre-populated with some headings and information which you are meant to customize yourself. So let's have a look at some of this. Here's the policy guide. So this, if you on this section, if you click on the policy guide here, the policy section expands down the bottom. So the very bit at the bottom down there with the link, that expands down, and you can actually see all the kind of the WordPress suggested default privacy policy headings. And there's a little button at the bottom which you can click to copy it into the clipboard and then paste it onto whatever page you want. But if you're creating a new page from the previous page from here, it's going to dump all that default information in the page anyway. So let's go through some of the stuff that's on there. I'll make that bigger again so we can see. So this is the first part of the suggested privacy policy text. And again, this is the default stuff that's coming with WordPress. So if you install WordPress out the box, click on WordPress policy, the privacy policy, and generate that new page. This is the stuff that's going to be in that particular page. Now, you don't have to stick with it. You can update anything you like, but it's just kind of it's like a general framework of stuff in there. So let's have a look through. Just to note, if you are editing this, the language is English US. So for us in Australia and elsewhere, you might have to update some word spellings. So things like color and Zs and things like that. So let's have a look through the suggested privacy policy text from WordPress and see what is covered. Now, here's first couple of paragraphs. So we've got the first one is who are we? And it basically says our website address is, and it's got your website address. Now, I don't think you really need to put your website URL in the privacy policy page that your visitors are already on the site anyway. So I think that can probably go. For the comments section, now you're going to need to adjust this section to reflect how your site handles comments and profile pictures and things like that. So if you're using the default core commenting, then it might be a little bit similar, but you can obviously change the way the comments, or you could use the discuss plugin as well, and that's going to act a different way. So depending on what your comment system is, you're probably going to have to modify this little bit of text here to update how it works and what sort of information it stores. The next couple of paragraphs are media and cookies. So the media section may not apply to your website if you don't allow visitors to upload images. So this is basically saying you've got to be really careful with uploading things like data that's got pictures that got location data like EXIF and GPS, because that could relate in kind of personal identifiable information for that person who has uploaded it. So that if you are allowing people to upload stuff, then you're probably going to have to keep that in your privacy policy. It's quite important for that. And beware as well support ticket plugins. So if you're running a support ticket plugin, some of these plugins allow people to upload images as kind of part of the support ticket as well. So if that happens, then this clause might be covered. It might be required in your privacy policy for that. Now, the cookies section, it covers kind of the basic WordPress core functionality. So it covers commenting, it covers logins, and it covers the editing process. So when you edit something and when you publish something, your IP address is kind of stored within WordPress. Similarly, when you're logging in, your IP address is stored for session information, and commenting as well, IP, and of course you got your name and email and stuff in there. So that's the kind of things that the cookies covers cookies for the basic core WordPress app. Now you're going to have to extend that more if you've got some plugins. So things like Google Analytics, that's the one that comes straight to my mind. If you've got Google Analytics, it stores a ton of cookies on a visitor's website to track all sorts of things. You'll need to include that and similar plugins and functionality in your cookies section. So this one here, it just covers the basic WordPress core stuff. So logins, comments, and editorial processes. The next couple of paragraphs. So we've got the embedded content from other websites. Now that may not be applicable to your website, depending on how you use your website. You might not embed anything at all. But if you are embedding things like gists or what is it, like animated memes, videos, things like that from another website, then you will probably have to keep this kind of thing in your privacy policy. So it basically says, because if you're embedding something, you're basically grabbing something from the other website, and that could come with cookies and tracking information and all this sort of stuff, on the other website. So just be careful if you're embedding content, and you want to make sure that you basically tell people in your privacy policy exactly what's happening, and that if there is embedded content, then you're basically not liable for whatever that other website does as regards to cookies and tracking and things like that. Okay, the second part is who we share data with. Now, this is a really important section, especially if your website or your primary target audience is European, because then they're going to be covered by the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation law. So I have a lot of clients that deal primarily with European clients, so they have to have that stated in the privacy policy about sharing data with. Now, when we're talking about sharing data, who do we share data with? So that could be with Google Analytics. for example. It doesn't need to be an entity, so it could be another service provider. Your backups as well, you're basically sharing data. Although the backup company doesn't have access directly or shouldn't have access directly to the content, you're still sharing that part of information in there. So you need to basically go through all these things like affiliate links as well, and just have a think about who you're actually sharing that information with, like third-party providers and whatever. So that's a really important one. You want to be able to update that one. I think this is the last slide here. So the last couple of sections, last 3 sections in the generic privacy policy text that comes with WordPress are about data retention, data rights, and where data is stored. So you need to check on the retention period of your backup sets. So if you're using a provider like Managed WP or WordPress or Updraft Plus Pro, then you're going to have to check exactly how long your data is being kept for. It could be indefinitely, it could be a couple of months, it could be just a week. You need to check that and update your privacy policy text to reflect that as well. And where the backup sets are stored as well, it could be a big issue. So you need to be able to state exactly where those are. So you need to know which servers and which location they are located in. So for a lot of these backup services, they are US based. So you'll need to update your privacy policy to say that your data is being stored in the US, and that could be a problem for European clients as well. That could be against GDPR. So things like that, when you think about backups, you need to think about where those are actually being stored, and if you're abiding by the privacy policy for that. Where you send your data, yep. So that's the storage location, the backup location. Some backup services allow you to actually store places in different locations, or if using something like Google S3 storage, S3 cloud storage, you can basically choose regions for where the backups are. So that could be quite useful for you. So those are the kind of the generic ones that come with WordPress. We've got media, cookies, embedded content, who you share data with, how long you retain your data, and what rights you have over the data and where we send it as well. So you basically need to go through those, update them as to what your website does for those. But you're probably going to have to add a whole heap of extra stuff as well, just to cover all the different plugins and services that you do. Now, for WordPress, for the kind of data protection rights, WordPress core has built-in features that allow account users to request a copy of their data or for you to delete it from their website. Now you can access these tools, and this is the right screenshot here, from settings, and then there's 2 links at the bottom: export personal data and erase personal data. Now both these processes start by sending an email to the person. So if someone asks you, what data do you store, you can come here, go to export personal data, and put in their email address. And that kind of verifies that they are the right person to be able to see that. So they'll get an email to say, oh, you've requested to personal data, please follow this process. They click on that, and then they get the information from that whole process. That kind of automated from that point of view. And remember, if a user requests to have their personal information deleted, that also means backup files too. And this WordPress functionality, the erase personal data, it doesn't cover any external plugins, just WordPress core, and that's all. Okay, so the generic privacy policy that comes with WordPress core is very general and only covers the very basic operations that the WordPress core performs. As you add themes and multiple plugins to your WordPress installation, you're going to need to review your privacy policy each time you do that and add to it accordingly. So rather than copy and paste someone else's privacy policy page, it may be worthwhile talking to a lawyer, or if you can't afford a lawyer, there's very good templates that you can buy on somewhere like LawPath. So that's lawpath.com.au. And I think they still give away 1 free template when you register, and then another one you have to pay. So if this is something that's important to you, and it kind of should be, maybe go on lawpath.com.au, register for an account, and maybe your first free template will be your privacy policy for your website. And again, I'll drop all the links down below after this presentation in the comments and on the meetup page as well. So you'll be able to get to all those links that I've mentioned for that. So that was a really quick one today. It was requested by quite a few people about privacy policy and exactly what who should have one, and what sort of stuff do you put in the privacy policy. So hopefully that's covered some of the basics there for you. If you've got any questions, pop them down in the comments. I don't surprise anyone will have any questions today because it's a fairly easy topic to do. So if there's no questions, I'll just go through some of these forms at the moment. So I'm always looking for topics. I've got some quickies posted for the next few weeks, but if something juicy comes in, I can always swap it out with a new topic. So please suggest a topics. There's a link to the form underneath the video in the description. A little shout out to WPAustralia.org. So if you're looking to look for a meetup anywhere in Australia, there's a button there, or there's a button to join Slack as well. There's a Slack, so Slack's pretty good. We all kind of hang out there, especially during lockdown time, chat to each other. I'll let you have a look at that in your own time. And here's my stuff for connection. Now, look, a question here. Andrew's asking, regarding the complaint handling, is there any mention of this in the standard policy, or is that a different policy altogether? Yeah, that's a different policy altogether, and so it's not included in the WordPress template. So that's something you're going to need to add into your privacy policy yourself. So basically, it should cover contact details. So there should be a link to a form or an email address where people can send a complaint in. And then a brief overview. So you don't have to go into details. Just a brief overview of the process that you go through for complaint handling. And that could be something simple as we reply and acknowledge your email, and we will follow up within 28 days or something like that. It's just a very, very high level, but it's just to give an understanding of the people exactly what's going to happen and what they can expect during the complaint handling for that. But it doesn't come with the WordPress core. That's a really good question. Alan asks, did you say that personal data needs to be deleted from backups? If someone has done business with you, you would be required to keep it for 5 to 7 years for tax and legal requirements. Yep, so there's all different requirements for that. Again, you need to speak to a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but basically if someone asks for the data to be deleted, it's basically their data. So they are required, they're required under law that they can do this. So they can ask to remove your data from your business systems. Now, when it comes to legal requirements, yes, for some tax purposes, there is a legal requirement to keep information. So that would kind of trump the personal privacy for a person. So if someone's asking to remove everything from your website, then you can remove as much as possible. But for things like tax and counting, that's a legal requirement for you. Then you need to be able to obtain to that. So this is where you can need to speak to a lawyer. But my understanding is that, for your tax and legal requirements, personal identifier information that you will need to keep, that basic minimum information there. But additional stuff to that, the people can request remove them from your website. So hopefully that kind of answers your question, and maybe not. But yeah, backups are included in that. So if you're generally keeping information, so if someone's been doing commenting on that, so if you've got comments stored in the database in a backup, they can request to remove that, and you have to basically remove those from that. It's a bit of a pain, but that's their requirement, their legal request. Privacy policy, what information do we collect? How do we use information collected? What exceptions are there to this rule? Is the information stored securely? Yes, so information being stored securely, I guess that's up to your hosting company, but you generally try and keep everything as secure as possible. Passwords would be on your side. So, if there's a breach from their systems, that's one thing, and they should have that covered in their own terms of services. But if you're using really easy passwords and people get into your database that way, then you could be held liable for that as well. Yep. So how do we use the information collected? Yep. So what exceptions are there? For example, what we've been talking about with Alan, for legal exceptions, so things that you need to legally abide by, there's going to be an exception. That's probably going to trump you as a business entity over the person's request to delete stuff and whatever. But you really need to speak to legal people about that. But that would be, so if you got a legal requirement, I would think that that would trump someone's request to delete stuff, because you obviously need to keep emails and invoices and things to prove tax returns. John also asks, what do you do with information provided as feedback? Will this policy be updated over time? Questions, complaints, and contact details. I'm not quite sure what you mean by what will we do with information provided as feedback. It depends where you're collecting that feedback from. If there's a form on your website, again, that could, if there's personal identified information, so a name and an email, then yes, that could be, people could request to remove that. And you need to tell people, where that's being stored as well. So you store it on a Google document, a Google spreadsheet, where's that spreadsheet being located, where's the data center being located for that. So things like that, yeah, you need to include that in your privacy policy, or you should. Yep. So obviously for legal things like that, John, that's going to trump someone's like personal request to remove information, because it's a legal requirement that you've got to keep that data. So they can always go to court with that and try and fight the government agency. But in general, that's going to trump someone's personal request to remove information. Yes, it's a bit of a nightmare for that. All right, just headings. Headings above in the headings are okay. Not a question. Yep, sure. That's great. Thanks for sharing, John. And thank you for the questions. I didn't expect any questions coming through, but that's been great. Kind of padded out the time a little bit because it was a really quick one today. So thank you for those questions. I think that's it coming through. So next month, so we have the big WordPress evening meeting. It starts at 6 p.m. It's usually on the last Monday of the month, but it's going to be the last Tuesday of the month. So it's October the 26th at 6 p.m. I'm going to be talking about WordPress security. So it's kind of my big security talk. I've not done one in a couple of years for that. So join in. So that's the evening talk for WordPress Sydney. And then next week for the quickies, again, lunchtime quickies, I'm going to be talking about adding videos to WordPress. So kind of best practices for adding video to WordPress. And this has been actually asked by probably about 10 people for those. So I'm just going to go through some ways to add video to WordPress and best practices on that. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for coming online on this kind of grey Sydney, getting to grey Sydney. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys next week talking about WordPress videos. Ciao.